The stars always looked like tiny lights to Lena. She was only 7 years old, but she already loved the way space shimmered outside the window of the ship. Her family was part of a trade mission, moving between worlds to bring supplies and share goods. For Lena, every planet felt like a new adventure. She often pressed her face against the glass and whispered to herself about how she would one day see every star up close. The mission arrived at a quiet planet covered in tall silver trees and soft glowing moss. The humans had landed there to meet with local traders. The air was gentle and the breeze carried a sweet scent that made Lena smile. While her parents were busy talking with the traders, Lena wandered a little farther away from the camp. She wanted to see the bright flowers that shone like small lanterns near the forest edge. At first, she stayed close enough to hear the voices of the grown ups. Then curiosity pulled her deeper into the trees. The moss glowed under her shoes, and the leaves above her head whispered softly. Lena followed a small trail, thinking she would return after just a few steps. But when she turned around, she no longer saw the camp or heard her family. She tried to retrace her path, but every direction looked the same. The trees stood tall and endless. Lena called for her mother, but only the sound of the forest answered. The girl's heart began to race. She hugged the small stuffed toy she carried in her hand, wishing she had stayed closer. The forest was not unfriendly, but it felt enormous to someone so small. The light faded as evening approached, and shadows stretched across the ground. Just when tears began to form in her eyes, she heard a gentle rustle. Something moved among the trees. Lena froze. From behind the glowing ferns stepped a figure unlike any she had ever seen. It was tall, with soft silver skin that shimmered like water under moonlight. Its eyes glowed faintly, not with harsh light but with warmth, as if it carried calmness within. The being tilted its head, watching Lena carefully. It did not move closer right away. Instead, it placed one hand against its chest and lowered its head slightly, a gesture of respect. Lena, though frightened at first, felt that the creature meant no harm. She held up her stuffed toy, almost as if to show she had nothing dangerous with her. The alien stepped forward slowly. When it spoke, its voice was calm and smooth, like the sound of wind through trees. The words were strange, but the tone carried kindness. Lena did not understand the language, but she could feel its meaning. She pointed back toward the forest, trying to explain she was lost. The alien looked in the same direction, then gently extended its hand. Lena hesitated but soon placed her small hand into the larger, glowing one. The warmth was comforting. Together, they walked through the forest until they reached a hidden village. The village of the Viuri, as they were called, glowed softly in the night. Homes were built from living trees that had been shaped with care, not cut or broken. The ground was covered in silver moss, and streams of clear water reflected the stars above. Many Viuri gathered when they saw the human child. They spoke to one another in low voices, surprised and uncertain. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, wearing gentle woven bands across the chest. This was Ryan, the leader of the village. Ryan studied Lena with thoughtful eyes. The first Viuri who had found her spoke in their language, explaining what had happened. Ryan listened, then knelt down so his eyes were level with Lena's. He did not touch her but spoke slowly, his voice calm and steady. Though Lena still could not understand the words, she felt a strange peace. She hugged her toy close and whispered her name. Ryan repeated it softly, almost as if to promise he would remember it. Then he gestured toward the village, inviting her to stay. The Viuri gave Lena a place to rest. They offered her fruits that glowed faintly and water that tasted fresh and cool. At first, she was shy, but when some of the younger Viori children came forward, curiosity overcame fear. They offered her small carved figures made from crystal-like stones. Lena smiled and handed them her toy for a moment to show friendship. The children laughed softly, a sound like bells in the wind. That night, as Lena lay on a soft bed of woven leaves, she looked up at the glowing roof above her. She missed her family, but she no longer felt alone. The Viori guarded her gently, keeping watch at the entrance of her resting place. Ryan stood among them, silent but strong, his eyes always returning to the small child who had stumbled into their world. In that moment, a silent promise was made among the Viori. The human child would not be harmed. She would be protected, cared for, and watched over until she could return to her people. Though they did not yet know what this choice would mean for their future, the Viori knew one thing clearly. Kindness had guided their hands, and kindness would guide them still. And so, in the heart of the forest, far from her home, Lena found safety in the care of beings who chose compassion over fear. The story of her rescue had only just begun, but it would one day change the bond between two species forever. Lena woke to soft light shining through the walls of her shelter. The walls were living branches shaped to form a safe room, and the leaves glowed gently like morning lamps. For a moment, she thought she was back in her family's ship, but then she saw the tall figure waiting outside. It was Ryan, the leader of the Viori. He stood still, calm, and when Lena stepped out, he greeted her with a slow bow of his head. The village was awake. The Viori moved gracefully, tending to gardens, gathering water, and shaping wood into tools. Their voices were soft, carrying like music in the air. Children laughed while playing near a clear stream. Lena felt shy, but she wanted to see more. She followed Ryan, who guided her with patient steps. One of the younger Viori, the same one who had first found Lena, approached holding a plate made of smooth stone. On it rested bright fruits that sparkled as if touched by starlight. The Viori offered the plate to Lena with a kind smile. She picked a small piece, tasted it, and her eyes lit up. It was sweet and juicy, unlike anything she had eaten before. The villagers seemed pleased to see her enjoy it. Though Lena could not speak their language, the Viori found ways to communicate. They used simple gestures, pointing to objects and speaking their names. Lena copied the sounds, and soon she learned a few words. She pointed to herself and said Lena, and the Viori repeated her name until it echoed softly across the village. They pointed to themselves as well. The one who had rescued her was called Sarah, and the leader was Ryan. Slowly, names and words built a bridge between them. As days passed, Lena grew more comfortable. The Viori children invited her to play with glowing stones that rolled like marbles. Lena showed them how to make drawings in the dirt using sticks, and soon the ground was covered with pictures of stars, ships, and people. She even drew her family, a small circle of figures holding hands. The Viori gathered to look at her drawings. Their voices grew quiet, and their eyes softened with understanding. They knew she missed her home. That night, Ryan called the elders of the Viori to speak. They gathered under the great tree at the center of the village. Its branches glowed brighter than all the others, casting light across their faces. Ryan explained that the human child was alone and lost. Some elders worried that keeping her might bring danger. The humans were powerful in space, and other alien groups might also notice her presence. Protecting her could invite trouble. But Ryan raised his hand for silence. He reminded them of the choice they had already made. When Sarah found the child, they had not turned away. They had brought her into their home and offered safety. To stop now would be against their way of life. The Viori believed in balance, in guarding life where they could. Ryan's voice was calm but strong as he promised that they would care for the child until her people returned. The elders fell quiet. One by one, they nodded in agreement. A promise was made that the human child would be under their protection. She would not be given away to strangers, nor left to wander again. From that night forward, Lena was not only a guest. She was part of the village. Lena herself felt the care of this promise without needing to understand every word. She saw it in the way Sarah always checked if she had food, in the way the children included her in their games, and in the way Ryan watched over her with calm patience. She began to smile more often, and her laughter rang through the village like soft bells. Still, when she lay down to rest each night, Lena hugged her stuffed toy tightly. She whispered her family's names, hoping they would find her soon. The Viori noticed this too. To comfort her, they began telling her stories in their own language, using hand movements and glowing stones to act them out. Lena did not understand every word, but she felt the meaning. The stories were about journeys, safe returns, and bonds of friendship. One evening, Lena drew her family again in the dirt, but this time she added the tall, glowing figures of the Viori standing beside them. She smiled and pointed at the picture. The Viori children clapped, and Ryan gave a small nod, his eyes shining with quiet pride. The promise of care had become more than a decision. It was now a bond. The Viori had opened their hearts, and Lena had trusted them in return. Though she longed for her home, she had found kindness in a place she had never known before. The forest, once strange and overwhelming, now felt safe when she walked with her new friends. The streams and glowing moss no longer seemed like mysteries. They were part of the home that kept her safe until her family could come. The Viori did not know what tomorrow would bring. They only knew that a human child had wandered into their lives, and their choice to protect her would shape the days ahead. And Lena, holding the hand of Sarah as the stars rose above the trees, felt hope. Somewhere beyond the night sky, her family was searching. But here, among the Viori, she was not lost anymore. Back on Earth, the news of Lena's disappearance spread quickly. The trade mission had returned without her, and the crew explained how the child had wandered off near the Silver Forest world. Her parents were heartbroken. They told the council that Lena was gentle and curious, always wanting to explore. Now she was missing, and nobody knew if she was safe. The leaders of Earth called an urgent meeting. They gathered in the Great Hall of the Space Council, where lights from the ceiling showed maps of nearby worlds. Many voices filled the air. Some argued that the child must have been taken by unfriendly species. Others believed she was simply lost and might still be alive. In the end, one decision was made clearly. A search must begin at once. Captain Marin was chosen to lead the mission. He was known for his calm judgment and steady heart. Though many commanders were strong, Marin carried something more important. He had patience and kindness, qualities that inspired trust. When he stood before the council, he spoke only a few words. "We will bring the child home." The search began with human ships leaving Earth and spreading into nearby systems. They carried scanners, translators, and supplies for long journeys. The crews were told not only to search the forests and mountains but also to speak with other species. News traveled fast in space, and often rumors carried hints of truth. At first, the search brought no answers. Several traders claimed they had seen strange lights near the forest world, but none could say what had happened to the child. Some alien groups even spread fearful stories, saying that a powerful new species might have taken Lena. These stories caused tension. If one species had harmed a human child, it could spark mistrust across the galaxy. Captain Marin refused to let fear guide the search. He visited station after station, asking questions and listening carefully. He reminded everyone he met that this was not about blame but about saving a single child. Slowly, this message calmed the rumors. Some species even offered help, sending scouts to nearby planets. Meanwhile, on the forest world itself, human search teams landed and began exploring the silver trees. They left markers, built small camps, and searched for signs of human life. They found traces, a small footprint in the glowing moss, a piece of cloth that might have come from a child's clothing, and faint marks on the ground where someone had drawn with a stick. These discoveries filled the team with hope. Lena was still alive, somewhere beyond the trees. Each night, Captain Marin stood by the campfires and spoke to his crew. He told them about Lena's family, about how her mother sang to her at night, and about how her father taught her to count the stars. He reminded them that they were not searching for numbers or reports. They were searching for a child who belonged to a family waiting in sorrow. His words gave strength to the crew, even when days passed without new findings. Beyond the human efforts, the galaxy itself began to watch. Messages spread from world to world. Some species whispered that humans would show anger if their child had been harmed. Others whispered something different, something softer. They said humans were unusual, for they valued even one small life as if it carried the weight of an entire world. Many listened to this with respect, and it began to change how they saw Earth. Back on the forest world, the human search grew closer to the hidden village of the Viori. Though the Viori remained unseen, they watched from the shadows, their glowing eyes observing every move. They saw the humans searching carefully, calling out the child's name with voices full of hope. Ryan and the elders spoke about this often. They now knew the humans had not forgotten the child. The searchers carried both urgency and love. Still, Ryan hesitated. To reveal Lena too soon might bring misunderstanding. The Viori had chosen to protect her, but would the humans see it that way, or would they believe she had been kept away? The elders worried about anger, but Ryan believed in honesty. For now, they kept Lena hidden and safe, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. On the human side, Captain Marin received a report that stirred his heart. A scout had found a series of small drawings carved into the soil near a stream. They showed figures holding hands, one of them clearly a small child. Though the shapes were simple, Marin felt certain. This was Lena's hand at work. She was alive. That night, as stars filled the sky above the silver forest, Captain Marin stood looking at the horizon. He whispered to himself that they were close. The child was not lost forever. Somewhere beyond the trees, she was waiting. The search would not end until she was safe again. And so, hope guided every step. What had begun as a desperate mission was now more than that. It was a test of humanity's heart, a chance to show the galaxy that every life, no matter how small, was worth protecting. The forest world grew quieter as the human search teams pressed deeper into its glowing trees. Their voices carried through the moss-filled valleys as they called out Lena's name. Each sound reached the ears of the Viori, who listened silently from the shadows. The Viori had lived in the forest for countless years, and no visitor had ever discovered their homes. Now, for the first time, humans walked so near that the children of the Viori could hear their footsteps. Ryan, the leader of the village, stood beneath the great glowing tree at the center of their home. The elders had gathered again, their faces calm but filled with concern. They spoke about the humans who searched. Some feared that if the humans found the village, they might misunderstand the Viori's choice to protect the child. Others worried that outsiders could bring change to their peaceful lives. Sara, the young Viori who had first rescued Lena, stepped forward during the council. Sara explained that Lena often spoke of her family. Even if the words were not clear, the way she drew pictures of them in the soil and the way she gazed at the stars told the truth. The child longed to return home. Sara reminded the elders that their promise had been not only to guard Lena but also to help her find safety. Hiding her forever would break that promise. Ryan listened to every voice. He knew their choice would shape more than one life. At last, he lifted his hand for silence. His words were steady. We protected her because it was right. We will return her because it is right. But when we reveal ourselves, we must do so with trust, not fear. Lena herself was not part of the council, but she felt the weight of the moment in the way the Viori moved around her. She noticed the quiet looks, the gentle pauses in their work, and the way Sara often stayed close. One evening, Lena sat by the stream with the Viori children. She drew a picture again in the glowing soil. This time, she drew two groups of figures. On one side was her family, on the other side the Viori. She placed herself in the middle, holding hands with both. When Ryan saw this drawing, he stood in silence for a long time. He understood what the child wished to say. She loved her new friends, but she still belonged to her family. The next morning, the humans came closer than ever before. Their scouts discovered broken branches and footprints that were not from their own boots. They found smooth stones shaped into tools and faint patterns carved into bark. The signs were clear. A hidden people lived within the forest. Captain Marin studied these clues carefully. He told his team to remain calm and show no threat. If Lena is here, he said, she is safe with someone. We must meet them with open hands. In the Viori village, the debate grew sharper. One elder argued that revealing themselves could risk everything. What if humans judged them unfairly? What if other species followed and disrupted the balance of their home? But Sara raised a gentle question. If we choose fear now, will the child's heart forgive us when her family stands so near? Lena herself seemed to sense the closeness. She often climbed to a small hill near the village and looked into the distance. One evening, she heard faint echoes, voices calling her name. Her eyes filled with hope. She pointed toward the sound and tugged at Sara's hand, as if begging to go. Ryan watched her closely. His heart was calm but heavy. He had always believed in patience, yet he also knew there was a time for courage. He told the elders that soon they would meet the humans face to face. Not with hidden steps, but openly. The decision was made. The Viori would prepare. That night, the village glowed brighter than before. Torches of crystal light were placed along the paths. The children whispered softly about the humans they had never seen. Some were afraid, but others were curious. Lena, resting on her woven bed of leaves, held her stuffed toy close. She whispered to Sara that her family was near, though the words were not fully understood. Her joy was clear, and it gave strength to those around her. In the human camp, Captain Marin stood by the fire, looking out at the forest. He felt that they were close, closer than ever. Something guided him to believe that Lena was not lost, but waiting. He promised his crew that they would search with care, not force. He reminded them again that this was not only a mission. It was a test of trust. As dawn began to rise over the silver trees, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The humans were ready to take their next steps, and the Viori were ready to reveal their truth. In the heart of the village, Ryan placed his hand gently on Lena's shoulder. She looked up at him and smiled, as if she already knew. The hidden village was no longer meant to remain hidden. The time of meeting had come. The morning sun rose above the silver trees, casting soft light through the forest. The humans prepared for another day of searching. Captain Marin stood at the edge of the camp, listening to the calls of his crew. They had searched for many days, but his heart told him that they were near. Something in the forest seemed to watch them, not with harm but with quiet care. That same morning, the Viori also prepared. Ryan gathered the elders beneath the great glowing tree. He told them the time for hiding was over. The humans had come with patience, not anger. They called out for their child with voices full of love. It was right to answer. Sarah stood with Lena at the edge of the village. Lena's eyes were bright with hope. She could still hear faint human voices carried on the wind. She pointed toward the sound, holding her toy tightly in one hand and Sarah's fingers in the other. Ryan placed his hand on her shoulder and gave a small nod. The decision was made. The Viori formed a small group. Ryan walked at the front, Sarah beside him, and Lena between them. The villagers watched in silence as the group left the safety of the glowing trees and walked toward the human camp. For many of them, it was the first time they had stepped beyond their hidden paths. The humans were busy setting up scanning tools when one of the scouts noticed movement among the trees. He raised his hand in alarm, but Captain Marin stopped him. "Wait," Marin said. "Do not move with fear. Let us see." From the forest came figures tall and shining. Their silver skin caught the morning light, and their eyes glowed gently like stars. At the center of the group was a small child. Marin's breath caught in his throat. It was Lena. She walked calmly, holding the hand of the glowing beings as if she had been among them for a long time. "Lena," Marin whispered. Then louder, "Lena." The child looked up, her face breaking into the widest smile. With sudden joy, she let go of Sarah's hand and ran forward. Her small feet moved quickly across the moss, and she leapt into Marin's arms. The captain knelt down, holding her gently. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered her name again and again. The crew gathered around, their faces full of relief and wonder. They saw the Viori standing in silence, watching carefully but without fear. Ryan stepped forward, raising his hand to his chest in the same gesture he had used when first greeting Lena. It was a gesture of peace. Marin understood. He placed one hand over his own heart and bowed slightly in return. Then he spoke slowly, knowing they might not understand every word. "Thank you. You protected her." Sarah stepped closer, her glowing eyes soft. She spoke in her language, gentle and flowing like water. Though the words were strange, Marin felt their meaning. She was explaining how they had found Lena, how they had cared for her, and how they had chosen to guard her until her family returned. Lena, still in Marin's arms, added her own voice. She pointed at the Viori and said their names, Sarah, Ryan. She repeated them again, her face full of pride. The crew understood that these were not strangers to her. They were friends who had kept her safe. The humans and Viori stood facing each other, silence filling the space between them. Then Marin broke it with calm words. "You showed kindness," he said. "We will remember this." One of the elders among the Viori bowed his head, and the others followed. Ryan's voice was steady as he spoke, though the humans could only catch fragments. Yet the meaning was clear. They had not asked for reward. They had acted because it was right. The crew felt a quiet respect. These beings had risked their hidden lives to care for a child who was not their own. Such a choice was rare and beautiful. As the day passed, the humans and Viori began to share more. Simple gestures built bridges. Water was offered, food exchanged, and small tools shown in curiosity. Lena moved between them with ease, guiding hands and laughter, the living link between two worlds. When the sun began to set, painting the forest in golden light, Marin spoke again to Ryan. He placed a hand on Lena's shoulder and then pointed toward the sky. His meaning was clear. The child would soon return to her family. But his eyes showed gratitude that could not be measured by words. Ryan nodded. He too understood. He placed his hand on Lena's other shoulder, then stepped back with calm dignity. The bond had been made, and though the child would leave, the memory of trust would remain. That night, the forest seemed different. It no longer held mystery or fear. It was now a place of meeting, a place where trust had been born. Both humans and Viori knew they had taken a step that would echo far beyond this single day. In the heart of the camp, Lena fell asleep holding her toy. She rested safely, surrounded by those who loved her. And nearby, the Viori returned to their village, their hearts at peace. They had kept their promise. They had protected the child. The first meeting had ended not with fear, but with hope. Back on Earth, the story of Lena's rescue spread quickly. People everywhere were amazed to hear about the Viori, the gentle beings who had protected a human child in a distant forest. Children in classrooms drew pictures of Lena and the glowing aliens. News stations showed maps of the Silver Tree world. Humanity was proud, and curiosity grew across every city. The council called another meeting, this time to discuss what should be done about the Viori. Leaders from every sector gathered in the Great Hall. The walls were lined with screens showing the forests and rivers of the distant planet. Many voices spoke at once. Some wondered how Earth could protect a species so far away. Others argued that it was a duty. One child's life had been saved by beings who asked for nothing in return. That alone proved their worth. Captain Marin was invited to speak. He described the first meeting, how Lena had run into his arms, and how the Viori had watched over her without fear or anger. He told the council that the Viori were wise, kind, and careful. They had acted from their hearts. They do not seek reward, he said. They only choose to protect life. That is why humanity must honor them. Ryan's image appeared on the communication screen. He spoke through translation devices. His voice was calm and thoughtful. He thanked the humans for respecting the Viori. He explained that protecting Lena had been a choice, not an obligation. The council listened, understanding that a new bond had been formed. After hours of discussion, a decision was made. Earth would declare the Viori a species under human protection. This meant that no one could harm them without facing the consequences of all human worlds. Treaties would be sent to neighboring planets, informing them of the decision. The Viori were now officially considered friends and allies of humanity. The news was announced to the public with celebration. Children drew pictures of glowing trees and tall, gentle beings. Teachers spoke about kindness, trust, and the courage to protect others. People everywhere felt pride, not because of power, but because of the human heart that recognized the worth of life. Meanwhile, back on the forest world, the Viori gathered to hear the news. The screens showed Lena waving at the council. She smiled brightly, pointing at Ryan and Sarah. She understood, even as a child, that their actions had changed the world. The elders spoke quietly among themselves, nodding in agreement. Their choice to protect a child had created something larger than they had imagined. Ryan gathered Lena and Sarah in the center of the village. "Humanity has seen what we have done," he said softly. "They honor us because we acted from kindness. This is a new beginning, not only for them, but for us." Lena clapped her hands and laughed. She did not fully understand every word, but she knew that something wonderful had happened. Captain Marin returned to Earth with Lena. He spoke gently to the council about the importance of trust. He reminded them that protecting others, even across worlds, built respect and friendship. Humanity had shown its care not with weapons or threats, but with recognition of a good act. Soon, Earth sent messages of friendship to the Viuri. Plans were made for communication and exchange of knowledge. Scientists, educators, and artists all prepared ways to share Earth culture and learn from the Viuri in return. It was the start of a partnership built on trust. For Lena, the declaration felt like magic. She could visit the Viuri whenever she wished. She could tell them about her home, and they could tell her about their forests. She understood, in her simple way, that her story had done more than reunite her with her family. It had united two worlds. At night, Lena lay in her bed on Earth, holding her stuffed toy. She thought of the glowing forest, of Ryan, Sarah, and the children who had played with her. She smiled, knowing that kindness could travel across the stars. The world had recognized it. The Viuri, far away in their village, looked up at the same stars. They felt the warmth of Earth's promise. Their choice to protect one child had become a bond for the future. They had acted without expectation, and now the universe knew their hearts. Through this declaration, humanity showed that it valued not only its own lives but also the lives of others who act with courage and care. The Viuri were safe. They were honored. They were no longer alone. And for Lena, the child at the center of it all, the message was clear. Compassion matters. Every choice matters. And even a small life can change the future of entire worlds. The galaxy was quiet in the early morning. Lena stood on the balcony of her home on Earth, looking at the stars. She held her stuffed toy close, remembering the glowing forest and the gentle Viuri who had saved her. She smiled, thinking of Ryan, Sarah, and the other children who had become her friends. Even though she was back with her family, she knew the Viuri were never far from her heart. The declaration by Earth had made the Viuri safe, and it had also created a new friendship between worlds. Scientists and explorers were now planning careful visits to the forest world, learning from the Viuri while respecting their home. Schools taught children about trust, kindness, and the story of Lena's rescue. People across Earth realized that a single act of care could change everything. One day, Lena's parents brought her to a special communication room. A screen showed the Viuri village glowing under the silver trees. Ryan and Sarah waved, their figures shimmering in the light. Lena ran forward, pressing her hands against the screen as if she could touch them. She laughed, and the Viuri laughed too, happy to see her smiling. The council had arranged this meeting to celebrate the friendship. Artists and engineers shared messages, songs, and paintings between worlds. The Viuri showed their technology, their beautiful carvings, and their glowing fruits. Lena pointed at everything excitedly, explaining things to her parents in simple words. Her joy was contagious. In the forest, Ryan spoke to the elders about the changes. They had lived quietly for centuries, avoiding contact with outsiders. Now, their people were honored and safe. They could share their knowledge and culture with humans without fear. This was more than protection. It was respect, trust, and understanding. Lena spent her days learning about both worlds. She drew pictures of Earth, showing the Viori the buildings, the oceans, and the trees that were different from their glowing forests. She learned their language better, able to understand the flowing words of the Viori. And she told the humans about the forests, the streams, and the glowing fruits. Her stories bridged the worlds. Over time, visits between Earth and the Viori village became more common. Scientists studied the glowing plants, while artists learned about the crystal carvings. Children from both worlds exchanged drawings, songs, and games. Lena often guided the human children through the lessons the Viori taught. She reminded them that kindness mattered more than speed or strength, and trust mattered more than fear. Captain Marin sometimes visited the forest too. He walked among the glowing trees, speaking with Ryan. They talked about protection, care, and respect. Marin admired the Viori's wisdom, and he knew that Earth had learned something important. It was not enough to explore the stars, humans must act with heart. As years passed, Lena grew taller, but she never forgot the first moments she spent in the Viori village. She often climbed the small hill near her home, imagining the silver forest. At night, she would point to the stars and smile, knowing that her friends were looking at the same sky. The story of the lost child became a legend across the galaxy. Humans told it as a tale of hope and courage. It was a story that reminded everyone that protecting life, showing care, and acting from kindness could unite worlds. Every planet, every species, could learn from it. Ryan and Sarah watched the stars too. They knew that humanity had chosen to honor them not because of fear, but because of respect. Their people were safe, and they had friends among humans who would defend them if danger ever came. They also knew that trust was stronger than any walls or weapons. Lena often visited the Viori village, carrying gifts from Earth and stories of her own life. She played with the children, taught them songs from Earth, and learned their games in return. She could see the happiness in their eyes, the same happiness she felt when they first protected her. In the quiet moments, Ryan would sometimes look at Lena and smile. She had reminded them why they chose to act with care. She had also reminded the universe that small actions could create great change. The Viori were honored, humanity had proven its heart, and the bond between the worlds would last forever. One evening, as the sun set on Earth and the moon rose, Lena held her stuffed toy and whispered a simple truth. She had been lost, but she had also been found. She had discovered friendship, trust, and love that stretched across the stars. And she knew that she, along with the Viori, would always protect those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had seen that kindness could shine brighter than any star. The Viori were safe. Lena was happy. And humanity, in choosing to honor those who act with care, had become a guardian of life itself. A new chapter had begun for two worlds, and it was one written with hearts full of hope, trust, and endless friendship.